Hi, Summer. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the students at William Jessup learning about seeking safety and the modality that you use with adolescents for trauma. Do you mainly use it with adolescents, or what population do you mainly use that?
I work with both adolescents and adults, so large percentage of my clients at this point are adults, but I'm also writing a supplement to the manual specifically for adolescents, so I've done
Okay.
a lot of work with youth as well.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about seeking safety and what that's about, and how you came to that modality of trauma.
Sure. So seeking safety is an evidence-based treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder and substance abuse because they so often go
Right.
hand in hand,
Right.
right? Where
Yeah.
you see 80% of people who have PTSD have a co-occurring disorder, and the number one co-occurring disorder is a substance use disorder.
Right.
And of course, among people with substance abuse problems, really high rates of trauma.
Hmm.
Historically, they've been treated really separate, as separate issues, separate models to address the addiction versus the PTSD. This was the first model designed to treat the intersection between the two.
Okay. So how does this model work? And I'm excited about this because in our class we've been studying the brain and attachment and how trauma interrupts the attachment. Um, Sometimes as children, I can hear my dog in the background. I don't know if you can hear him, but I can't ask her to leave because I was gone for too long today. Um, yeah, she has attachment issues. So tell me how this works, because it is exciting that it's a modality that works, treating the substance abuse and the trauma and recognizing that those are usually comorbid.
Yes, right.
Mhm.
So, broadly speaking, PTSD treatments generally will fall into one of two categories: either past focus models like EMDR or exposure therapy, where you're going to go back, tell the story of what happened, relive it in detail with your senses intact. Um, and then present focus models, which I tend to think of as, even though the trauma or the traumas may have happened in the past, the
Right,
reality is they don't just stay in the past, they leak. They leak into our lives now.
right.
And so the present focus models are about how to manage the leakage in your life today. And that's where seeking safety is.
Okay.
So it focuses exclusively on the present,
Right.
which is why it's able to be conducted by a broader range of roles. So it does not have to be clinicians in order to conduct seeking safety, and also is safe to be used with people even who are active in their addiction or early recovery,
Well, that's
which,
exciting.
yeah, it is.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. So
It's the
tell me
only
how that works.
So it's a very structured approach. Basically, you have one manual, $50 ish, that has both a detailed guide for the facilitator and then reproducible handouts that you would photocopy and give to the clients.
Okay.
So one manual, which now there's an ebook version as well, but you have handouts that you use with the clients, follows a very structured approach with a check-in and a check-out, and it's very skills focused. So it's rooted in CBT, and there's a strong emphasis on really seeing that link and connection between the PTSD and the substance abuse.
So is it more of trauma-focused CBT in a nice, concise package for the clinician or the lay? Like I imagine a biblical counselor or a counselor who works within the church setting, they could
Yeah.
use this model. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they can use it. So there's some elements. So TFCBT has some present focused and some past focused elements to it.
Right, right.
And of course, it was designed to treat the trauma, not necessarily the substance abuse. Seeking Safety does both.
Okay.
Um, but mentioning biblical counselors or within church settings. So
Mhm.
Seeking Safety itself is a completely secular model.
Okay.
However, as a Christian myself, having gone to seminary, one thing that I have just noticed within Christian faith communities is that when people experience trauma or they're struggling with addiction, they don't tend to seek out therapists. They tend to go to church. And so
Right.
churches are not always equipped to be able to deal with issues around rape and domestic violence and war and just unbelievable suffering, tragedy, child abuse, right?
Right.
And so my colleague, Risa Hobson is her name, she's also a licensed therapist. She and I co-authored a Christian faith-based guide, which is a supplement to Seeking Safety.
Okay, great.
Specifically, yeah, to be able to be used in churches or by Christian counselors that incorporate Christian faith and biblical principles. Also, how, the water gets so muddy. Many people have had just awful things done to them in the name of God or with spiritual justification.
Right.
So our guide was designed to kind of also address that spiritual wound, spiritual abuse, and for people who really want their faith included.
Okay, I'm hearing my dog. I want to pause this because she's tearing something apart. Hang on just a second.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so you were talking about, before my dog interrupted us, you were talking about the fact that a lot of people have injuries through the church, where either well-meaning people are misguided in their treatment of trauma, or people are just evil or foolish. And you're saying Seeking Safety, you developed a Christian portion of that, but it's very much a secular program that can be baptized. I like that.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
been baptized. It's baptized.
Right. So they would work together. So secular model that's really congruent with Christian ideals and principles, so it was very easy to create a supplement, but by itself, it's not, there's no spiritual aspect.
Well,
And
so
then
my
supplement.
bias is that healing comes from God, and so secular, my husband's heart surgeon was not a Christian, and he did an amazing job at a triple bypass and valve repair. So I think the same thing can be true psychologically, and I thank God for people who have discovered things like Seeking Safety. So
Yeah.
how long has Seeking Safety been out? And then you said it's evidence-based, so I'm thinking that there's research being done on it.
Yep. So early 90s is when it was first developed.
Okay.
I think there's been 60 some studies that have been done on it. So Lisa Najovitz is the author, and she's very involved in the research world and has done a lot of work within the VA and taught at Harvard and
Excellent.
Boston University. So she's a smart cookie. And yeah, so lots of studies that have been done, and they've really been very diverse in nature. I mean, both adolescents and adults, men, women, trans folks, lots of settings, inpatient, outpatient, peer-led.
Wow. What kind of substances does this work with?
Yeah,
So,
any type of substance abuse, but actually really any type of unsafe behavior. So originally it was designed for PTSD and substance abuse, but since then has really been used much more broadly to include people who maybe have trauma but don't necessarily meet criteria for PTSD, or maybe it's depression, anxiety.
Right.
And same way when it comes to like the ways they're coping, the main goal is to replace unsafe ways of coping with safer options.
Excellent.
Which very often is drugs and alcohol, but it might be like problem gambling, a sex addiction, overeating, undereating, variety of different unsafe behaviors.
What population do you just love working with?
So I was a chaplain for 10 years in juvenile detention centers in Portland and Seattle. That's what drew me to the field in the first place, and actually to this model. So After having worked with youth who were in trouble with the law, there was just such an unbelievable amount of trauma that that's what drew me to become a therapist, was because of that work. When I was working with youth who were in a residential program, they were all in state custody, all on probation or parole, that's when someone introduced me to seeking safety.
Okay.
Knowing what had drawn me to the field, and went to the training, started implementing it, found it to be really effective, reached out to the author and was like, here's kind of some of the things I'm doing with adolescents.
Right.
She and I formed a partnership. There'd already been, I think, one study at that point done with adolescents, but it was largely used with adults, also some with adolescents. And so she and I started working together on an adolescent version, and I started doing trainings and consultations. So that is my heart.
So this would also work perhaps with adolescents that might be on the fringe or already in the court system.
Yeah.
Like probation or parole. Wow, that's exciting, because one of my students is already doing outstanding work with adolescents, and adolescents in particular. My dog just doesn't want to settle down. Adolescents in particular who are fringing either in the court system or moving towards the court system.
Right.
So you're saying seeking safety has some really good outcomes of pulling those adolescents back in, away from their negative behaviors. That's really exciting. That is really exciting.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we're only tapping the edge of the potential for this work with adolescents. It's grown exponentially in terms of being used in detention centers and mental health organizations, with youth schools. But I think, for youth who are involved with who are involved with the legal system or juvenile justice,
right,
who may, it's like we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Post meaning after, but
right,
for a lot of times these are kids, there's no post, right? It's ongoing. We're trying to shovel snow while the blizzard's still coming. And seeking safety, because it is really a stage 1 model focused on safety first, it allows for some of that stabilizing without asking to kind of open up a whole can of worms when they're just trying to survive.
So so I'm going to bring in my population. Have there been studies with first responders using this modality?
That is a good question that off the top of my head,
maybe I should start one.
Yes.
Maybe I should get trained and start one.
Yeah. And it's very possible that there has been, like I said, I think there's been 60 some studies. So there's a really long list with really diverse. I just don't off the top of my head. That's not my population. So I would have to go to the website and check out. But if you go to seekingsafety.org, click on evidence, and you'll be able to see all of them.
Okay, that's great. So what's one of your best clients that you've worked with using seeking safety? What's like, if you, without identifying information, if you wouldn't mind sharing, like, what's one of your best times that you had working with either an adolescent or an adult?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of memories that come to mind of different faces.
That's exciting.
It's okay. So it's used individually and in groups. So a couple of examples, I'll give one for each. So one that stands out to me is I have these kind of animal analogies.
Hang on, she just ripped up a plastic thing. Hang on just a second. Let me get it from her. Okay, sorry about that. The dog again. Let's go back to a time where you just really remember it working really effectively, and you loved the outcome.
Yeah. So a few thoughts that come to mind, and I have many. I've used Seeking Safety for over 15 years, so I have a lot of memories. And would it be best to share adolescent examples or either adults or
I
adolescents?
think adolescents would be really exciting. I'm thinking of one person in the group, but then if you want to share an adolescent and share an adult, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay, so one adolescent that comes to mind, I remember her coming in and we did this topic called PTSD, Taking Back Your Power, which is essentially, there's a strong psychoed component to just learning what PTSD is, its relationship to substance abuse, which for her, substance abuse wasn't an issue. She was certainly at high risk. Sort of had to think more through a prevention lens, just given trauma, family history of addiction, but she was not a youth who was actively using. And so we did this PTSD, Taking Back Your Power topic together, and I was explaining what PTSD is to her. And when we were done, she said, okay, well, I'm freaking out because you just described everything that's going on with me. And I've always just thought I was a bad kid. And so that stands out to me. I remember just thinking of what it would be like as we work together around trauma, just that shift from kind of a rotten apple, just a bad kid, to I have a medical condition seemed absolutely groundbreaking for her in her healing. And then, of course, to continue in our work around what now do you do? How do you heal from PTSD?
Right.
And when we were done, so I was working with her, not in a faith-based organization. And I remember at the end of the treatment, when I was sort of asking her about, like, what did you take away from this? One of the things that she said was, of course, I always have to embody my this adolescent girl, right? How she talks. But
Wait,
says,
now
okay,
she's
so
got the medicine. Hang on just a second. I'm sorry. Go back to this. Okay, so you had just asked her what she had learned. You can tell I raised 4 kids and I'm used to these distractions, and I'm like, okay, let's go back to this.
Sure. Yes, so I had asked her what she got out of the treatment at the end of it. And she said in her very 15-year-old girl way, I know we didn't talk a lot about God in here, but I think what I got from this is faith. And I always remember her saying that because I had already had this prompting where I felt like I really wanted to create a faith-based addendum to really be able to do this in Christian settings. And and that was one of the things that she shared that she took away was renewed faith.
But that's just so powerful, because when people are healed, they do gain faith. It's just, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So even would this be something for teenagers who are cutting?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay. That's probably the number one, when we talk about unsafe behaviors, is, if it's not marijuana, it's usually self-harm is probably right up there in terms of the top unsafe behaviors that I see.
Okay.
Boys more in terms of aggression, but yeah. So you can absolutely apply the skills to self-harm.
So what are some of the skills that are used as part of this process?
Yeah. So there's 25 different topics that make up seeking safety, and they vary from, they're evenly broken up between cognitive, behavioral, and interpersonal topics. So some of the topics are things like asking for help, setting boundaries in relationships, taking good care of yourself, listening to yourself with compassion. There's a whole topic called safety, which has 84 different safe coping.
Sounds so good. Skills. I mean, it sounds like it might be really good.
The faith-based addendum that my colleague and I wrote. Yeah. It's really good for what?
Really good for young adults also, who might be dating people that aren't, that display that their picker is maybe broken a little bit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. To even know what a healthy relationship looks like.
Right. I'm excited about this. So this is, it's not it's deeper than something like the Genesis process. It sounds like it's more less woo-woo-y and more concrete, and teaching people skills to have relationship with themselves that's really healthy and to distance themselves from the trauma. Do you ever use this, like have somebody, so how long is this program typically?
Yeah. So there's 25 topics, but each topic stands alone. So you don't have to do all 25 and you don't have to do them in order. So it's very flexible.
Right.
The general principle would be the more the better.
Right.
Our faith-based guide, we chose 10 topics that we felt like these are the most foundational and also ones that would be really important, like boundaries with Christians. And so we chose 10 topics. You know, potentially down the road, we'll do the other 15 topics, but we started with 10 of them to easily be done as a 10-week curriculum within faith-based settings.
So I believe I used to facilitate the Parent Project, which is a parenting class. It's evidence-based for parents whose kids are choosing destructive behaviors. And they, as part of their research, because it is evidence-based, they mandate that you have to do 10 weeks, even though you could do 20, but you have to do 10 because the research shows that that change doesn't come unless you're doing 10 weeks.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Safety doesn't say there's a minimum, and the studies have varied quite a bit in terms of the number of sessions that were offered. So we just say the more the better. So
that's really exciting. I could see this being really useful with the population. I mentioned that I have a nonprofit, and I could see this being really profitable with the nonprofit. And I have a CADC also. So I noticed that your CADC and then LPC also, right?
Right.
So that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Is there anything, would you ever combine, like have somebody in a seeking safety group and then realize that they really could benefit from seeing an EMDR therapist or brain spotting therapist? Do you ever combine that or allow for that to happen or encourage that to happen?
Sure. And it's not uncommon that people are receiving multiple services, and there's a strong emphasis on encouraging clients to reach out to multiple forms of support. So they may be receiving multiple forms of treatment. Seeking safety is done individually as well as in groups, so it can be done either way. Generally, I do EMDR as well. Generally, if I'm working with someone who is actively using substances, in early recovery, or actively suicidal or having really significant self-harm issues, I focus on seeking safety first. And even if I end up doing EMDR down the road, I sort of think of this as part of the resourcing phase of EMDR to really focus on stabilizing skills and getting control around their destructive behaviors, whatever they are, substance abuse or otherwise. First.
That just sounds really excellent. I mean, I just listening to it, I'm thinking, wow, first responders in a group setting could really benefit. I don't know if the VA has, the VA is always trying something new, but I could see the VA using something like that.
Oh yeah, many studies done in the VA, and many VAs using Seeking Safety. So there's definitely, seekingsafety.org. You can.
Okay, I'm excited to hear about it, and I'm excited to look more into it, especially you working with trauma and knowing EMDR, and then also doing Seeking Safety. I'm excited to learn more about it. I got to get the dog. He's hang on. Sorry. Okay, we're back. So if one of the students wants to find out more information about this, and I'm really excited because they don't have to be licensed to use this, and
Right.
they could possibly get the training on this and integrate it into their practice almost immediately after the training.
Yeah.
How would they, again, how would they reach you? And how would
Yeah.
they reach Seeking Safety? You said seekingsafety.org,
Or
right?
can I share my screen and I'll show you?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. Oh, let's see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Are you able to
Let me,
try making me the co-host and let's see if that works.
that may have worked right there.
Okay, let me try again. Oh yeah, here we go.
Okay,
All right, I'm going to share my screen so that I can take you to the website. Oops. So seekingsafety.org, which treatment-innovations.org, they're both the same website. I
okay,
just think seekingsafety.org is easier to remember. Both of them will bring you here.
definitely. Yeah.
So if people were interested in attending a webinar, right underneath the picture of the book, you'll see this one-day webinar trainings that are open to all.
Okay,
You can request a training for your organization, but this would just basically be a way that individuals can attend a webinar, which actually so that's how. But this model does not require people to attend a training in order to conduct it. So the only thing they would have to have is the book. Yeah. So the book is the one and only thing that they have to have, and start by reading the first 2 chapters. That will talk about how to conduct it.
Okay.
You can order it through Amazon, which is usually the cheapest and fastest way to get it. But of course, you can also go to the store right here.
Right.
And select the Seeking Safety items. She has a few different models that are out. So here's all things Seeking Safety. So the ebook as well as the paperback, and everything you need is there. So it's not a workbook that each client has to have. One workbook per facilitator, and they would photocopy out of that book.
Oh, that's exciting.
This is the Christian.
That's really good.
Yeah.
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 So I see a woman's path to recovery. What is that one about?
That is a self-help book that Dr. Najovitz wrote as well. Also focuses on trauma and addiction. Heavy emphasis on, gender-specific self-help for addiction. I believe this was the first one that was published. And then her new book is Finding Your Best Self, which is here. And this one can be facilitated or it can be used as part of self-help. People can just go through it on their own. It's not a treatment manual per se. There's an appendix of how to use it in a treatment setting.
Okay. That's exciting. I really appreciate.
So if we go, let's go to evidence and let's see what. Sure. Let's see if there is a first responder study. So here are all of the studies that have been done. So I'm just
women in prison,
through.
Women veterans, men veterans.
Yep. Like some of them were like here, this is not 31, not with substance abuse, but instead around gambling and PTSD.
Right.
Women with disabilities, peer-led, adolescents,
rural women.
Yes.
Rural.
The tongue twister.
French Canadian women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drug court, women in drug court, men in drug court. That's exciting. Right. Yeah. Transgender women living with HIV. Wow. That's really...
Living with HIV and also down here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perceived helplessness. Wow, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't see one specific to first responders. So you may have to reach out to the website and
find out if we can do that. Yeah. I think that's a
But
good
it doesn't
idea.
look like there's a formal study.
Yeah.
Mhm. Let me go to the.
I think that our connection is getting wonky. I'm not sure why, but Aboriginal communities, VA
Yeah,
clinicians, men soldiers in Canada. Wow, it's really good. Really good.
okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, sure, nice to meet you and be able to
Yeah.
share with you a little bit about seeking safety and about the faith-based guide. So I hope people find
Yeah.
it to be useful in serving clients and in their own lives as well. At this point, seeking safety is kind of just a part of who I am. You know, it's not just something that I teach other people, it's something I try to live in my own life.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, I will look into this and then maybe bring it into my group practice. So I appreciate you letting me know about it, and I'm glad to pass it on to the students, another resource of like cognitive behavioral and real practical skills. Yeah.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
going to turn off the recording now.